Hi, I'm Tony Jones. Here's a bonus question we couldn't fit on Q&A. It's from Hannah Johnson.
In regards to the latest American massacre, do you believe the power of the students have significance in democracy, and do they have the power to make change?
Anthony Grayling.
Oh yeah, I do. I mean, I'm so full of admiration for those young Florida students, and I'm full of optimism too for the youth movement in the UK. There's a movement there called Our Future, Our Choice, OFOC, or pronounced OFOC, which is about Brexit, and it's a group of students and young people. I'm delighted to say, and many people in this audience would be very delighted to say, that they define the young as anybody age 45 or under. So, you know, I'm all for the youth, and I think they can have a very, very big impact because, of course, it is their future, and so the kinds of arguments that they're putting have got to be listened to.
Harriet, what do you think? I mean, they're pushing it uphill, aren't they, in the United States, because they've got to overcome the NRA, they've got to overcome the incredible power of that lobby on Congress.
Well, I think that this might be a breakthrough moment because politics and the political parties have failed to solve this problem, and we see the absolute toll of massacres that happen in the States. And what's happened is the students, the young people, have taken it to themselves. They've taken it out of the hands of what happens in Washington, and they are demanding action and shaping what they think the solutions are. And I think that actually they will make change, and I think that that's very, very exciting.
Catherine.
Thanks for your question. And
think about one of those young women has a Twitter following that's now bigger than the NRA.
That's impressive. And the perspective I bring to this is that I hope you're right. I don't share any optimism that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution will ever be amended. I'm sadly old enough to remember the deaths within weeks of one another of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy was my childhood hero and was campaigning on gun control when he was murdered. But he did say one thing that I think young people should cherish, and he said it at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, where he was giving a speech against apartheid. And I think regardless of age, and we can become too hard-bitten, whether we're active politicians or those who rub shoulders with them and write about them in a cynical fashion and lampoon it. And I'm guilty of it as anyone, but he said to those young people at that university that every time a person stands up for an ideal or strikes out against an injustice or moves to improve the lot of a fellow suffering human being, they send a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing one another from a million different centres of energy and daring, those tiny ripples will build a tidal wave capable of sweeping away the mightiest walls of resistance and oppression. And I hope you can maintain that degree of idealism and bring it to the life you lead after you finish your schooling, and I hope that young lady in America achieves the same thing.
Claire.
It's a great question, Hannah, thank you. I just say generally, looking at the situation in America at the moment, I'm just reflecting on how lucky we are for the quality of our democracy here in Australia. You know, with the current conversation, people are so down on politicians, they're so down on government generally, and I understand and accept that, and we do need to do better. But, you know, if the US can't pull itself out of this horrible situation, I just shake my head. Can the young people make a difference? Well, young people drive social change like this all the time. They're the only people, really, when we look at the great leaps forward that have happened. You know, you talked about right before, Catherine, you know, it's young people with energy and this unshakable belief that things can be different and better. That's the only thing that can fix this problem. I definitely don't trust the politicians because I remember a lot of these school massacres. You know, this has been going on for so many years in the US. But yeah, if it's going to change, these young people are the ones to do it.
We'll still give the final word to a politician. Zed.
Well, thank you. I'm still getting over the fact that AC's definition has me as young, so I'm very pleased. Look, I think there's no doubt, and I've got to say, very well said, Catherine in particular. But I think there's no doubt that I share Catherine's view that changing the Second Amendment would be an extraordinarily difficult thing. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I think there are things that can happen, certainly if Congress were to move or if states were to move within the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not mandate that, you know, semi-automatic or fully automatic weapons need to be available and the like. So there are restrictions that could be placed that most of us would see as pretty sensible, that we obviously did many years ago, and I think it certainly saved a lot of lives here in Australia. We used to see many mass shootings in Australia when I was your age or younger. We haven't seen that since 1996. Thankfully, you know, by the grace of God and through some sensible policy changes. So, you know, I hope for the sake of the United States and for everyone else that they do make progress.
I think it's a pity that the Prime Minister didn't give that advice to the President when he had the chance to talk to him just after the massacre.
Well, look, you know, I mean, he made it clear what our gun laws are. I think it's very much on the record. There's clearly a difference of opinion between our leadership and the leadership in the United States.
Well, that's where we'll have to end it. Thanks very much, Hannah, for your question.